Dr. John Vender, Dr. Krishnan Dhandapani, both from the Medical College of Georgia at AU, here to talk about brain injuries. Thank you all for staying with us. We appreciate that. We appreciate your time. I wanted to ask you, Chris, real quick, since we're dealing with brilliant blue G dye, this relative of what makes M&Ms and Gatorade blue, is it cheaper since it's not some big drug that Big Pharma developed? Will it save us money if you have to inject us with it?
So yes, it's very cheap. It's
Good.
much less costly than pharmaceuticals, which is a blessing and a curse, actually, when it comes to clinical trials, in that there's not a big drug company behind it. So sponsoring these clinical trials, these large-scale clinical trials, can be very costly. And so that's one of the things we're trying to seek federal support from like the National Institute of Health.
Yeah, we want to keep that money flowing.
And that's what, yes, we're trying to target them to fund our research to get it to the point where we can implement it with some of Dr. Vender's patients.
All right, you want to talk about something that I just cannot get my head wrapped around, no pun intended. Talk about the Hemi craniotomy procedure. It's pretty drastic.
Yes, this is an example of a skull which has the side contained, and then this is actually the removal of the skull bone. What we do is we try to, as a last-ditch effort, if we can't control the swelling, what we'll do is we'll actually remove the side of the skull, and you can see how that gives access for the brain to swell away. Brain swelling actually causes the brain components to shift or move out of their normal positions. They typically come up against the bone of the skull, which is one solid box of bone, basically. Won't stretch, won't bend, and therefore the pressure is exerted towards the middle, which is where our brainstem is. Our brainstem is similar to a fuse box. It keeps us alive. And if the swelling gets to the point where the brainstem gets compressed, we lose the patient. So the hemicraniectomy allows the brain to swell away from the middle out towards the outside. And we've seen improvements in survival from the teens up into the 80–90% range with hemicraniectomy.
When the swelling goes back down, you put their skull back together.
Yes, interestingly enough, the brain does need the skull.
Yeah.
And with the skull missing, we notice a lot of changes in blood flow, or what we call perfusion to the brain. And it's obvious that after a certain amount of time, when the swelling subsided, it's best to put the bone back. And
do they wear a helmet in the meantime?
Many patients, yes, wear a helmet to protect that side of the brain.
Speaking of helmets, I wanted to hit CTE, concussions, real quickly before I lose y'all. Any progress being made on that front when it comes to helping our athletes be healthier?
I think there's tremendous progress, and mainly with just recognition of the significance of the problem. I mean, for decades, mild brain injury, which is the most common form, 90% of brain injury is going to be what we call a concussion. A concussion is a transient or time-limited alteration in brain function from force, often without an identifiable structural problem. In other words, you do a CAT scan at the hospital, you don't see anything. And for years, people thought, oh, everybody gets better, it's no big deal. But what we're learning and what we're acting upon is the knowledge that there is chemical change or possibly structural change in the brain with concussion, and that until the brain is completely healed, a second mild brain injury or concussion can have dramatic impact upon the brain.
Can you diagnose CTE in a living person?
There's clinical things that you can do to be suspicious, yes.
To be suspicious. Has
Yes.
there been a football helmet invented yet, or will there be, that's concussion-proof?
I'm not sure. I think they're trying. They're trying to improve the helmets, and I think to get into more sports-related, I think a lot of it is technique, and I think techniques changed as the helmets have actually gotten better. I think football players feel a little more secure, and maybe they're leading with their head for tackling, which is leading to maybe some of this increased incidence that we're seeing now.
Would you let either one of your children, would you let your children play football?
Well, I have daughters, and they're welcome to if they want.
If they want.
They all do martial arts, which is a high-risk activity.
How about you, football?
I would say no.
No football for you. If they want to, yes.
Yeah. One of the things I think we're seeing a lot more of now is there's actually on-the-field assessments.
Right.
There's several apps out there that can pre-test athletes, and then if there is a suspected concussion, then they can be tested to see their response, and they can be tested multiple times until they return to their baseline.
And so what advice would you have for parents who are out there? Follow these new rules that say don't lead with the head. Have fun playing the sport you love, but please be careful. What more can we do if we do give them the green light to play?
Well, as parents, you need to be informed about concussion, and you need to be informed about the protocols that they have now for concussions and return to school, return to work, return to play restrictions, which are becoming very well documented. There's several organizations and several good websites that I can provide to you if you'd like. that provide a lot of good education for parents and teachers and coaches. But I think the understanding that repetitive mild brain injury or mild repetitive concussion is a real major threat to health is important.
If I knock my head on something when I'm just going about my daily routine, or if I fall and hit my head, how can I tell if I have a brain injury?
It's difficult, I think, because we don't have clear-cut diagnostics. Like Dr. Vender said, many times with the mild, you can put them on a CAT scan and you don't see anything. And that's been one of the big challenges, both in research and in clinical care of these patients is, growing up, it was always just, hey, dust yourself off, you're fine again.
Right.
And I think that's what Dr. Vender is referring to, is that don't rush it back out there. After you've had a first one, you may feel better. After you may have a headache the first day, you go sleep it off, or, when we played sports as a kid, just dust yourself off and get back in there. And I think what we're learning now is you need to rest. Your brain needs time to recover, and that means resting. Don't go back in and play your sport. You may have to sit out, and you may feel better a day or two later, but that doesn't mean you're ready to go back in and compete. And cut down things like screen time where you're stimulating your brain. You don't want to just sit there on an iPad and watch TV all day. You really need cognitive rest, mental rest, and physical rest. And I think that's really the key that we've learned in research over the last few years is it just takes time. It can't be rushed. And I know as a fan of many sports teams, we want to see our favorite athletes back out there after a concussion. Maybe it's not time yet, and we need to rely on these concussion protocols, which have been developed and they're evolving.
Are any two brain injuries the same?
No. I mean, every human being is different. Every body responds differently to injury. The mechanisms are, although similar, never identical. There are some warning signs. If you bump, and we all bump our head, we all slip in the shower, we all stand up quickly and hit the cabinet door.
You don't want to race to the doctor.
No, but if any loss of consciousness needs to be evaluated. Anybody who's disoriented, confused, patients say, oh, I felt woozy or unsteady, any ringing in the ears, headache that doesn't go away, if it worsens with exertion, if you're witnessing another person, warning signs, if the pupils aren't symmetrical, if there's a loss of consciousness and they wake up, even though they look perfect, there's still a very high risk they'll deteriorate again. So any weakness or asymmetry in body function is a red flag. So there are times when you have reason to be concerned and call for help. If you're not sure, call for help.
I thought we were going to have to wrap up the show very quickly. My producer was kind enough to give us just a few extra seconds. But going back to the martial arts that your daughters take part in, I had not heard that was a high-impact sport for the head. Do they get hit or kicked in the head a lot?
When they do sparring, there's a risk, and when they do some of their kicks and some of their jumps,
so is this
they
like
can
mixed
slip and
martial
fall.
Arts?
Oh, no. It's
okay.
Taekwondo.
This is Taekwondo,
yes.
But they might get kicked or hit in the head.
Or fall when they're doing one of their techniques, yes. It's all padded, but again, it's still an impact.
What do you tell them? Be careful, don't get hit or kicked in the head? Or, really, I'm not trying to be silly, but what do you say to them? Because there is a reluctance, I'm telling you, among parents out there today to let your child leave the house, much less play an impact sport. So what's your advice to your girls?
And I'm one of those parents. I'm very worried about their safety every day, all day long. But at some point, you have to do those things that give you pleasure, and you have to enjoy your life. And, being, as Chris said, use the safety equipment, use the protection, be careful. If you do injure yourself, get checked and wait until you're ready to go back 100%.
And actually, just to interject, I think it's not just impact sports that you can get concussions. Actually, some of the fastest rising places where concussions are found are girls' soccer, cheerleading, things you don't traditionally think of as contact sports. They actually have an incident rate that's rising even faster than football. Obviously, many more football players, hockey players are showing up with concussions, but it's cheerleading, girls' soccer, they're not immune to the same problems.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, I'm never going to let my kids leave the house now, but no, you do have to let them live their lives. Just be aware of what's out there. Dr. John Vender, Dr. Krishnan Dhandapani, thank you for the work that you do. It's fascinating. Thanks for breaking it down.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thanks
Absolutely.
for having us.
Well, you're welcome anytime. We hope y'all come back.